equipment to take photos of himself with maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people, all at the same time.
He had one of the first home video cameras ever marketed, and he liked to tape himself having sex with women, lots of women.
Clearly, the fun-loving actor had a secret dark side.
In his private life, he was dealing with some pretty serious demons.
He achieved this greatness because of his success and luck, and then part of his identity couldn't tolerate it, so he created this underworld that felt comfortable for him, and it just collided in this horrible way.
After Hogan's Heroes was canceled in 1971, Crane seemed to sink ever deeper into his pornographic compulsion.
He had deep addictions, not just the kind where I'm going to go home and I'm going to, tie up the wife and have some kinky sex. No, it was like obsessive.
The initial suspect in the case was Crane's longtime friend and sexual wingman, John Carpenter.
They like to corral these girls and tape each other. I think possibly Carpenter had a little bit more of an interest in Bob Crane than Bob Crane had in him.
Friends maintain that Crane wanted to cut off the friendship. Police found the actor's date book with the name John Carpenter scratched out.
I think there's a real good possibility that at or about that night that Bob Crane broke off a relationship with Carpenter, and that in turn apparently enraged Carpenter.
After the murder, police found Carpenter less than cooperative.
He began to look like a suspect just from his avoidance of trying to assist in the investigation, plus some of the things he was saying or not saying just didn't sound right.
Police found small traces of blood in Carpenter's rental car, but since DNA testing didn't exist at the time, they could prove only that it was Crane's blood type, not his specific blood, so the case against Carpenter remained circumstantial.
They had theories on how the crime had been committed, and I felt that those theories were unsubstantiated.
The case sat on the shelf for 14 years. That is until police found overlooked photos that showed blood and what looked like brain matter in Carpenter's car. John Carpenter was finally charged with killing Bob Crane.
I mean, you have the blood inside of the car. The blood type matched Bob Crane's. You had the tissue in the photograph that appeared very similar to the types of tissue from the bloody crime scene that was found on the pillowcase. All of those things together, we thought was going to convince a jury.
The evidence proved inconclusive. On October 31st, 1994, he was acquitted. Carpenter died 4 years later at the age of 70. There are no other suspects, and the case remains unsolved. Celebrities and entertainers would not be who they are if not for their fans. But at what point does fan become fanatic? Number 9, the murder of Rebecca Schaefer.
Rebecca Schaefer is a horrifying Hollywood story because this is innocence gunned down.
In the 1980s, actress Rebecca Schaefer began climbing the Hollywood ladder of success as the co-star of My Sister Sam.
Such a gorgeous, clean, down-home girl, really good actress, obviously very beautiful.
Rebecca had many admirers, including an eager fan in Tucson, Arizona, named Robert John Bardo. Bardo was an emotionally unstable high school dropout.
All the teachers commented on the fact that he was very isolated and exhibited no social skills.
Bardo's adoration for the young star turned into an obsession. He wrote dozens of letters to Rebecca. In return, Bardo received a personal postcard and an autographed photo, but he wanted more.
He had been obsessed with her, had written her constant letters, had told her that he was going to be with her, he was going to marry her, that he would come down and be with her one day. Well, he actually did that.
In 1987, Bardo went to Los Angeles twice and tried unsuccessfully to visit Rebecca on the set of her show.
Stalkers often feel like they aren't somebody unless somebody loves them. So there's really this hole, and so they're trying to achieve a feeling of, I am worthy, I am lovable.
2 years later, Bardo hired a private investigator to locate Rebecca's home address.
At the time, she lived in an apartment where you could literally walk right up to the door.
In the early hours of July 18th, 1989, 19-year-old Bardo arrived by bus in Los Angeles. he found Rebecca's building and buzzed her apartment.
So I introduced myself. I'm Robert Barlow from Tucson, Arizona. I said, I'm a fan of yours,
After a friendly exchange, Bardo left. Bardo went to a nearby diner, then realized he forgot to give Rebecca a note he'd written.
I figured since I was there, I could ask her, just go back to her place and ask her, and give her that letter, Plus, I wanted to use that letter as an excuse to bring her to the door so we could talk with her so she'd come out just like before and talk,
Then he went into the bathroom and loaded his .357 Magnum pistol. At 10:15 a.m., Bardo returned to Rebecca's building and buzzed her again. Rebecca came downstairs.
Grabbed the door. Gun still in there. It was wrong. Grab it on the trigger. This. Blood hit her hair. Blood squirted out. And she was just screaming. Oh my God. I killed her,
So I think what happened is, my personal opinion is that he reached out to hand her the card. She leans forward to take the card, and she's shot in the chest.
Bardo took off running.
I just couldn't deal with it anymore,
A neighbor called the police. 30 minutes later, Rebecca Schaefer was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. The next day, Bardo was found in Arizona and taken into custody.
He ran away afterwards, really expecting to be caught on the way. He was waiting for the great result that would come after the attack, and it didn't come. So now he gets back to Arizona, and he acts in a way that will predictably bring attention to himself. He walks around in the middle of traffic. He makes no denials about what he's done.
In October 1991, Robert John Bardo was convicted of homicide in the first degree. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
It's why stars are afraid. It's why people run into nightclubs and people, zoom into their gates and have these gates shut. Hollywood can be a very scary place.
A down-on-her-luck actress, an iconic music producer, a chance encounter that led to tragedy. Number 8, the death of Lana Clarkson. Lana Clarkson was tall and beautiful. The 40-year-old actress appeared in more than 30 movies and TV shows, but she was always looking for her breakthrough role.
She took a job as a hostess at a very popular club. Many, many actresses do that because you meet people who can help your career.
On the evening of February 3rd, 2003, Lana was working at the House of Blues on the Sunset Strip when she met legendary rock and roll producer Phil Spector.
She was titillated by a celebrity, and Phil Spector was a celebrity. Here's a very eccentric record producer who worked with John Lennon, and he worked with the Ronettes.
Spector ordered a cocktail and a bottled water. He gave Lana a $450 tip and a ride back to his mansion.
We don't know what happened behind those walls, but evidently somebody snapped.
According to the initial police report, Spector's chauffeur was outside when he heard a gunshot. This is what he told the cops.
Phil Spector comes out with a gun in his hand and says, I think I killed her.
The chauffeur called the police. When they arrived, the cops found Lana Clarkson dead from a single gunshot wound to her mouth. A blue steel .38 Colt revolver lay under her left leg.
Of course, a single gunshot, not necessarily it's a homicide. So sometimes the media report not really represent the fact. That could be a suicide, could be an accidental death.
Police found teeth scattered on the floor.
In my experience, most people who commit suicide with a firearm via the mouth typically place the barrel of the weapon inside their mouth and pull the trigger. They tend not to fire the weapon through clenched teeth.
Police had to subdue Spector with a taser and cuff him while they searched his home. They found a blood-soaked cloth on the bathroom floor and a wet hand towel on the sink. Spector initially told police he shot the actress accidentally. Later, he officially changed his story and said Clarkson killed herself.
Don't forget, Spector said, yeah, she was shot. The big issue was it accidental? Did she pull the trigger, or did he intentionally kill her?
The coroner ruled the death a homicide. 9 months after the shooting, Phil Spector was charged with Lana Clarkson's murder. He pled not guilty.
We try not to talk about anything extraneous to it, let the report speak for itself, and let the case go through the court, and give Mr. Spector the benefit of the doubt and let him have his day in court.
He got it. Spector's trial began in April 2007. 5 months later, jurors reported they were deadlocked and unable to reach a verdict. The judge declared a mistrial. Prosecutors then announced plans to retry Spector. Coming up, porn, drugs, and a brutal murder scene. The white stucco house in the Hollywood Hills was very easy to miss. But to the cops, it was a renowned drug den. And for porn legend John Holmes, it was his own personal pharmacy. Number 7, the Wonderland Murders.
John Holmes was the biggest adult film star in the late 70s. There was tons of money, tons of drugs.
Holmes made more than 2,500 films as his alter ego, Johnny Wad, but all he had to show for his career was a $1,500 a day coke habit.
This was a period where porn was still very much a shadow environment, and the people involved in it were shadowy people.
By the end of the 70s, Holmes was out of work, unable to perform due to his drug abuse. He fell in with the gang at the house on Wonderland Avenue.
People would come and go from the house day and night. That balcony came into play. They would just throw the drugs down and the money up.
Holmes also hung out with nightclub owner Eddie Nash, a man who always seemed to keep an ample supply of drugs in his Hollywood mansion. Desperate and broke, the porn star and his drug buddies decided to rob Nash.
And basically the Wonderland Avenue gang were a bunch of dope house rip-offs. They would get police badges and go rip off drug dealers, and then they would sell the drugs. So that's what they were known for.
On June 29, 1981, hours after Holmes left a door unlocked at Nash's house, the Wonderland gang stormed inside. According to police, they came away with drugs, jewelry, and $185,000 in cash.
I stole some money, tied Nash up. Not a good thing to do.
A day after the robbery, Holmes was spotted wearing some of the stolen jewelry. Nash forced a confession from the porn star. On July 1st, 1981, Holmes led at least 3 men into the Wonderland house.
John punched in the security code, and they said, "Who is it?" And he said, "It's John Holmes." They let him in, not suspecting that they were going to be attacked.
The murderers went from room to room, beating whomever they found.
The victims were bludgeoned to death with lead pipes.
There were 5 victims involved. Of the 5 victims, 4 died as a result of the attacks. 1 did survive, although suffered some debilitating injuries.
The murders were so violent that when police arrived the next day, they discovered a grisly sight.
Usually the bloodiest kinds of wounds that we see are typically stab wounds. They tend to be the worst kinds of bleeders, but blood force would probably be a close second to the amount of blood loss that will occur. And in this particular case, the Wonderland murders presented a fairly gruesome, fairly bloody scene.
Holmes immediately was a suspect, as he was the only link between the Wonderland gang and Nash.
Now, how much he saw, how much he did is up for speculation. There are those who say that he was made to watch the murders and to get his hands dirty. They did find, I believe it was a bloody palm print on the wall from one of the victims' blood, and that involved him.
In 1982, Holmes was tried for the murders, but his lawyers argued that he was just another victim. Holmes was acquitted. Eventually, Eddie Nash pled guilty to conspiracy in connection to the Wonderland murders. He served just 31 months in prison. For John Holmes, he escaped prison time, but life didn't get better for the porn legend.
He started to do gay films for money to feed his drug habit, and that's allegedly where he contracted the AIDS virus.
John Holmes died on March 13, 1988.
John Holmes was kind of the embodiment and the consequence of what happens with that kind of a culture. That's what was going on the Sunset Strip. That's what was going on in Hollywood. That's what